Our speaker is Tumbleweed Smith, who teaches broadcast writing and production here at WTC. He produces a radio show and newspaper column, both statewide. He's won state, national, and international awards for his audio and video documentaries and features. He has the largest private collection of oral history in the United States. He served in the Army Security Agency from 1957 to 1960, and his unit received a citation directly from President Eisenhower for exceptional espionage work during the Cold War. Tumbleweed has a bachelor's degree in English from Baylor, a master's degree in journalism from the University of Missouri. He lives in Big Spring with his wife Susan, who we're fortunate to have here today as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tumbleweed Smith.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, fellow veterans. It is quite a high honor for me to stand here before you. I salute your bravery. Some of you have probably seen things you will never talk about. I've been interviewing veterans for 40 years and have brought with me some of those interviews. One of my early documentaries contained interviews with veterans of World War I. You know, we have had some kind of war going on for most of our lives. Thanks to you, our country has not been a war zone. Although we have had some terrorist bombings, and last week at Fort Hood, we were reminded that terror can come from within the military. The U.S. Navy's biggest loss of life at sea occurred in the Pacific toward the end of World War II, when Japanese torpedoes hit the USS Independence on July 30th, 1945.
We sank in 12 minutes, and that ship was 610 feet long, 2 football fields long. You could see in the moonlight, the sailors still jumping, and you could see the propeller still turning, and that thing was going straight down.
L.D. Cox of Comanche survived the disaster.
They estimate 300 men went down with the ship. We carried right at 1,200 men. That left about 900 men to be in the water. I never saw a life raft. I never saw a boat. From the very first morning, sharks began to circle. You could see the fins, and you could see down underneath the water. You could see 20 feet easy down in that clear water. And they'd just swim around and around and around, and then roll their old eyes, and then directly wanted, just like lightning, to come straight up, grab a sailor, and take him down. See, we were on the equator. It would get so hot till it'd just fry you during the day, and then you'd pray for darkness, and then dark would come, and it'd get cold, and you'd shiver and shiver, and then you'd pray for daylight so it'd warm up. We were in the water 4.5 days and 5 nights. Every day, more men went out of their head. One of the guys within 3 feet of me, shark came up and took, and just covered me up with water. And some would just die of exposure. There was a total of 317 survivors. We lost 880 men. It's the greatest sea disaster ever in the United States.
On the 5th day, an American plane flew over.
And there's a guy waving from the door of that airplane, waving to us, and I want to tell you, the happiest day of my life. My hair stood straight up, I know. And chills came over me, and tears came down my eyes. We knew we'd been found.
A few books and a movie have documented the USS Independence incident. During World War II, a pilot from Brady, Houston Lee Brawley, was killed near Remy, France, when a German train he was strafing exploded.
And Houston Lee's aircraft was demolished in the air, in midair. The fuselage crashed and slid across a road and into a rock fence of a home that belonged to the most prestigious family in Ramey. In fact, their name is Ramey. And a young teenage girl that lived in the home rescued his body out of the aircraft and hid it. The Germans frantically looked for his body. They didn't know if he bailed out or what the situation might have been. The next night, a bunch of partisans there in Ramey buried Houston Lee's body in the local Ramey cemetery. And they took one propeller blade off his crashed aircraft and used that as a marker on the grave and covered the grave in flowers. And the next day, the Germans were really upset, really upset. They took all the flowers off the cemetery and said, if any more flowers show up anywhere in this cemetery, we're taking 30 hostages and they'll be shot. And the next night in Ramey, they covered the whole cemetery with flowers. And nobody got shot because it was close to the end of the war. And the German commander thought, well, best thing to do is probably back out of this one. So they backed out of it, but the Germans lost an awful lot of men on that train. Apparently the train had some V2 warheads in a couple of cars in the middle. The explosion was so hideous that it blew all of the windows out of the cathedral in Ramey. And they were stained glass windows that were built into the cathedral, which was built in the Middle Ages. That stayed unrepaired literally until 1995. Houston Lee's old fighter group, 364th Fighter Group, got their heads together and decided they'd try to raise the money to restore the cathedral in Ramey. And they thought they'd need $250,000 to do it. And they started a fund called Windows for Ramey. And in a matter of about 2 years, they had all the money raised, and the windows are now completely restored.
That's Bert Striegler, president of the Heart of Texas Museum in Brady. Brady and Ramey are now sister cities. The U.S. Marines' greatest loss of life occurred on Iwo Jima in 1945.
The battle started February 19th, and we got there and led the pre-invasion bombardment fleet in.
The island was heavily defended. 20,000 Japanese soldiers with heavy artillery were in caves and catacombs.
It was a terrible, terrible battle. And I saw sights that I've never discussed with anybody before because they were so horrid.
American planes were flying over Iwo Jima trying to get to Japan.
We knew that we had to have a place where we could fly our B-29s to Japan because we knew we couldn't win the war unless we hit Japan. We started to fly about the 1st of October of *44. They went over this little unsuspecting island of Iwo Jima, and fighter planes came out like a swarm of bees and attacked the B-29s, and it was just in a moment or two that there were B-29s in the ocean all around Iwo Jima. Maybe 5 or 6 B-29s, something like that. That day, this little island became known as the inevitable island. It had to be taken regardless of cost, and they didn't figure the cost was going to be too much, but it was terrible. It was the worst battle in the history of the Marine Corps.
The battle for Iwo Jima lasted 36 days in 1945.
February 19th, that was the invasion day. See, we were there 3 days before for pre-invasion bombardment. But from the 19th through the 26th of March, and they thought it would take 3 days. It was just an 8 square mile island.
The U.S. Marines had 26,000 casualties on Iwo Jima, including nearly 7,000 killed in action. The Japanese lost 19,000 soldiers. The U.S. Marines claimed victory on March 26, 1945.
Just had to keep going. That's the way the Marines are. They don't give up.
That's Iwo Jima historian Ed Swaney of the Iwo Jima Museum in Harlingen. Ladies and gentlemen, I have traveled beyond the borders of Texas. I was in Havana when Castro was coming into power. I was in South Africa when the first free elections were held after apartheid. I was in Tiananmen Square in Beijing just before government tanks massacred the protesting students. I've seen the lights of Paris and Hong Kong and Mexico City. I've seen canals in Venice and Amsterdam and Copenhagen. I've seen palaces in Russia and unusual animals in Australia and New Zealand. I have seen the sunrise at Machu Picchu. Everywhere I go makes me extremely proud, and I know how fortunate I am to be an American. While a soldier in Europe toward the latter days of my tour over there, I was driving alone at midnight on the coast of Spain when Armed Forces Radio was signing off with the Star-Spangled Banner. I stopped my car, got out, stood at attention with my hand over my heart, grateful to be an American. We have discovered how lucky we are to have the privilege of living in the greatest country on earth. Thank you again, veterans, for keeping us safe and keeping war far away from our shores. Ladies and gentlemen, it's quite a privilege for me to be with you today and be your speaker. Thank you very much.